Before we get started, I just want to say, don't listen to me. I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a trained professional. I'm going to do things how I do them, and it just works. But I don't want you to get hurt by listening to me and taking my advice. So, with that, proceed with caution. Hello, everybody from the Garage Bowling Alley. I am getting ready to do one of my favorite things on the Brunswick pinsetter. Nothing makes me happier than watching a Brunswick pinsetter when it's adjusted right, setting pins just spot on, no pins wobbling, everything right on the spots. This is going to be about a 6-part video. First part, we're going to go over leveling the pinsetter and the initial assessment just to see what you might need to work on before you do any of this stuff. The second will be adjusting the deck heights. And then after that, we're going to adjust the deck cables. Once we get that done, we're going to go up and adjust the 2-to-1. After that, we're going to adjust the detector rod, make sure everything's going to be working properly, make sure it detects out of range strikes, standing pins. And then the last part will be adjust the deck to where you actually have the pin setting right on the spot on the lane. So it's not like, half inch, not twisted or anything like that. All right, as any good Brunswick pin setter or even AMF mechanic knows, first thing you do before you do anything, turn off that breaker. Even pull your power cord too. That way you just have 0% chance that pin setter is going to come live while you're in it. You don't need to be scared about making the adjustments on these that I'm going to show you. It's really not going to change much in your pin setter operation. Your detector rod's not going to be off. Your rake's not going to sweep funny or anything like that. These are real simple things. Don't be intimidated by it. Let's go over everything now, and I'll show you a few things to look for before you get started to maximize your pin setter spotting capabilities. Now, crawl under your pin setter. Now look over here. See that nice little gap right there? I had several of my spotting fingers were actually rubbing, because they were bent, rubbing the frame of the pin setter. I've gone in and changed a bunch of them now, but I have pretty much a consistent gap on both sides of my spotting fingers. If you see like this one here, nice little gap. The early Brunswick Otis pin setters were made with steel spotting fingers. A lot of these are still steel. The only problem is they're bolted to an aluminum deck. So you got an aluminum deck, steel spotting fingers. When you have a blackout, your pin's jammed with the spotting finger here. And if something's going to break, what's going to break? Aluminum or steel? Replacing a spotting finger, 2 bolts, real easy. Replacing a broken deck, not that easy, not that cheap. So Brunswick finally got smart after their initial run of steel spotting fingers and made them out of aluminum. Yeah, they bend a little easier, break easier, but I'd rather have that break than my moving deck. Also, you want to look at your deck pad. These are hot shot deck pads. They're a little thinner rubber. They got the plate in there for the pin finders. The newer ones, the fatter foam ones, they have the same pocket in there too. Some of them are glue on, most of them are bolt on, but want to make sure you don't have a hole worn in the middle of your deck pad. Because if you have one that's got a hole in the middle and another one that doesn't, it might give you an inconsistent detection when the pin setter comes down to detect standing pins or not. So you want to make sure all your deck pads are in good shape. If you got one that's got a hole in it and the other ones that don't, replace that one. If you got 2 or 3 with holes, because a lot of time they get older and they dry rot out in the middle, and after a pin sits on it for so long, that rubber wears out, they dry rot, and it just goes bad. You want to make sure you got 10 consistent deck pads so you get a 10 consistent detection for your detector. So anyways, you want to check that little gap here, make sure, because if you're bent, you're going to find it rubbing. You can actually see where this one had been rubbing on the side of that frame for a while until I went back and replaced the spotting finger. But you can kind of look here too, kind of look at your gapping here to your gapping here. Should be a consistent space here as is over here. Plus check your deck roller. Make sure your deck roller is free moving. Make sure it's completely there. A lot of these deck rollers, they break over time. Pin's going to hang down funny when it comes to set pins. So make sure your deck roller is free spinning, even spacing. and you're not rubbing up against the frame here or here. If so, replace your spotting fingers. And if you got steel ones, might do yourself a favor, go ahead and remove those, put in some aluminum ones. They're worth the investment, better than a broken deck. All right, here is something I made, just a 2x4, two pieces of wood, 2/4 inch bolts sticking up from the bottom here, but you got a left and a right. Here's my right spotting finger. It's labeled right hand. There's the part number for it. But anyways, what I do, just to see if they're bent, put it on there like that, and you got no gap up on the top. That is a good spotting finger. That's why it's marked good too. But if it's bent, you're going to put it on there and you're going to see this big gap in there, and that spotting finger can go in the trash or the recycle bin, whichever one you like. But this one, flat down on here, it's just barely touching. That's a good spotting finger. So you can take all your spotting fingers off if you really want to and check them all. Now let's run the pin setter through a cycle and I'll show you what we'll be aiming for by the time we get done. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. But all the pins pretty much stand straight up and down when they go down and set nice and smooth. So watch this. Watch the deck shift here. All nice straight up and down. Gently sets them down. No wobbles. Now on the initial assessment, I'm going to talk about 15/16 having a socket to fit under their 15/16. But on the initial assessment, we don't care about that. We're just going to check and see how high it is. But on the initial part, we're just going to worry about leveling it to where we get the same on all 3 points of the moving deck assembly. So 15/16 is our goal, but we're not going to be fixated on that at first. We're just going to be fixated on getting 3 equal measurements. If one of them is at 15/16 already, then we're just going to jack the other 2 points to match that one. But for right now, let's just worry about getting 3 equal distances, and then we'll worry about getting 15/16. All right, I've got mine at 180 right now. I'm going to stop it at 270 this way. It's just how I do it because I can, because I got the space to do it. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in here to catch in the reset lever. So when I turn it back on, it's going to stop at 270. You can do it any other way you want, but since I'm standing on the side of the pin setter, it's easier. All right, we stopped at 270. We come back here and look. 4-to-1 is right at 270. It's not above or below because you want to make sure you're right at 270, which means the moving deck is at its very bottommost position. Anywhere above or below this, your moving deck's already coming back up, or it's not all the way down. Your measurement's not going to be correct. So make sure you got this even. You may have the newer type rake crank rod that comes up and off the top. Just make sure you're parallel. Make sure you're exactly 270. All right, now if you read the book, it's going to tell you your bottommost measurement at 270 should be about 15/16 of an inch. What I do, I got this Craftsman socket here. It is an 11/16 socket. It is 15/16 inches tall. So I'm going to use this to measure my side-to-side distance on the moving deck and make sure my machine is level before I proceed on. Now you got your machine at 270. You got your power cord pulled and your breaker turned off, of course. Come under here with your 11/16 socket, which is 15/16 inches wide. Check your gap right there. Mine's a little bit above that, so mine's right at about 1 inch. But check that measurement right there. It's pretty darn close right there. I know I've leveled mine, but I'm going to show you just that it's right a little bit loose, right at about 1 inch. All right, come around to the other side near the back, and got a little bit of a gap there, but I'm pretty much right at level. I'm right at about 1 inch on both sides. I tweaked mine a little bit, and 1 inch is what worked best for me. And make sure you're level before we start and do anything else. Then also, when you get done with that, you're going to come up and measure the front as well. See, mine's got a little bit of a gap there, so mine could be a little higher in the front, but I'm not going to mess with it because it's setting pretty good right now. But just check all 3 corners and see how level you are. All right, now that we've talked about leveling the pin setter and your initial assessment on everything to look for before we move forward, in the next video, we're going to actually start adjusting the pin setter, so your moving deck assembly is perfectly level off the lane on all three corners. You want to make sure you have the exact same space on all three. That way your detector rod gets a consistent adjustment and your pins will spot the best way possible. But that'll be your next video. Thanks for watching this one. See you in the next one.